May, the governor came out with his May revised, and tonight we're proposing to present the proposed budget with, like I said, the final adoption coming at the next board meeting, which is scheduled for June 23rd. So in looking at the assumptions that we're using for the revenue, we are under the local control funding formula model now. So there's various components that make up the local control funding formula, which include the following. Our enrollment projection for next year is based on 2,456 students. That's what we currently show we have enrolled to attend next year. That's all of our pre-registrations, students that we know won't be returning. Those are the number of students we know as of today. We're estimating an unduplicated count of 28 students. That includes our English learners, our foster youth, and our students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. The governor is proposing a 0.85 COLA on our target funding, so we've used that in our assumptions, as well as the proposed funding gap percentage of 28.05%. What that means is in a year-over-year comparison is that our per student amount should increase about $414, or just under 7%. When we look at our ADA calculation, which still goes into place under the local control funding formula, we're estimating our percentage of attendance to be 97%. That's what our average is. Throughout the district, it varies by grade level, but that's our average. So we're estimating our ADA to be 2382.46. And under local control funding formula, we now report our students that attend county programs, county special education programs. So we're estimating that ADA to be 3.24, which is what our actual attendance was at P2, which is the April reporting of our attendance. So overall, the ADA that we're estimating to use for our target is 2385.7. The enrollment breakdown by school site is provided here, which makes up the assumption that we're using at the 2456. So in our other revenue assumptions, on the federal side, we're using status quo for our federal dollars. We have decreased our federal funding in the current year by 5% due to federal sequestration, which we assume will continue on into future budget years. Our state revenue, we are budgeting as status quo, and our local revenues, which include our parents clubs and EFO, will be budgeted at the 2013-14 level of support. And looking at our staffing assumptions, based on the enrollment in May, which was the 2456, this is how our staffing would look. We're anticipating we may need to increase by 3 FTE at the elementary sites due to the primary grades. I'll try to push the right button here so I don't struggle with light. So it looks like we may have to increase 1 FTE at Delray, Glorietta, and at Sleepy Hollow. It's interesting to note that we're not projecting an increase in our enrollment, but the configuration of where that enrollment is projected to be is in our K-3 population, where we try to maintain a 20-to-1 class ratio. Our other site staff is included in the proposed budget as a status quo. The FTEs are shown here by school site. And our district certificated staff is also projected to remain status quo. And looking at classified staff, we are projecting status quo other than our noon duty at Glorietta. We're projecting a decrease in the FTE there. In our district classified staff, we're estimating an increase of a 1.5 FTE, and that's due to the addition of the district office part-time custodial position is at a 0.5, and we've included the director of technology as a classified management position. That position has not been filled. The statutory benefits associated with classified employees is a higher percentage than that of certificated, so in the budget development process, we have listed that position as classified. Once the position's been hired, we can make the budget adjustments at that time. based on worst case scenario, so to speak, we have included that in the budget as a classified management position. On the revenues, we have projected to have a beginning fund balance of $4.5 million, broken out here in the various categories. This includes restricted and unrestricted dollars. Our revenues by type, and I apologize, I should have changed that one that says revenue limit. I'm still trying to convert to the new terminology. It should be local control funding formula. So this is how the revenue by type breaks out in the projected budget, unrestricted and restricted. Wanted to point out that our community support is a very critical piece of our ongoing revenue. In our projected budget, we estimate that 26.4% of our revenue will come from local sources, which includes parcel tax, EFO, and Parents Club. I just want to give a shout out to EFO. We received an additional $40,000 for this year, over and above what the original pledge was. So we thank you both for your ongoing support. This slide shows a breakdown of our revenue by percentage. The local control funding formula now makes up 59%, which is a bit higher than we used to see our revenue limit, but that is because it encompasses a majority of our state revenue that used to come in under state. So now you see that our federal and our state are only 2% each of our overall budget, which is significantly lower than we've seen in the past. In looking at our expenditures by type, this is a breakdown of our expenditures by classification and then also by unrestricted and restricted. This graph illustrates the percentages of our expenditures, showing that a majority of our overall expenditures is in the area of salaries and benefits. When we look at our other funds, we do have to adopt budgets for all of our funds, including the ones you'll see here. Our deferred maintenance fund was a fund we had hoped to close out a year ago, had $56 carry forward. We are attempting to close that fund out. I think we have 20 cents left in that fund right now, but our hope is that we get this thing closed out so there will be no activity in the budget year. Fund 17 is our special reserve fund for other than capital outlay. We're not budgeting any expenditures out of that fund at this time, and the only activity we anticipate to have is interest income, which is based on the interest that's earned at the county treasury. Our capital facilities fund, which is also referred to as our developer fee fund, is shown here. Our developer fee revenue has increased in the current fiscal year, so I anticipate that this estimated revenue for next year will probably increase as we go through the year. We're seeing a lot more developer fee permits and building permits being pulled within the district. Within this fund, we pay for our portable leases and classroom payments, as well as some of our site improvement. Fund 40 is our special reserve fund for capital outlay, or what we fondly refer to as our PLT account. So the estimated expenditures that you see under the 14-15 budget category are those that we have estimates on. It's a rough estimate based on the projects that are on the approved project list. There will also be budget adjustments as we move forward and contracts are signed, and we have already earned close to $30,000 in interest this year in the money that's in that account, so I anticipate we actually may have to make adjustments as we move forward on the interest. Fund 67 is our self-insurance fund, where we don't anticipate much expenditures to come from, with the only income that's budgeted here is for interest. In our multi-year projections, we look first at our enrollment. We're projecting no growth at this time in our enrollment projections. We don't want to anticipate growth that may or may not show up, I guess I could say. So at this point, what we have done is used our current enrollment and moved that enrollment forward with projecting our TK and our kindergarten classes at the level that they've currently been at, the average of our incoming kindergarten, but no growth from either the Pulte project and or the Wilder project at this point. On the assumptions, we've used the following enrollment numbers, 2452 and 2436 for those 2 years. Again, using the attendance rate of 97%, which equates the following average daily attendance. We're using the state statutory COLAs that are provided and the estimates in the May revise, and the growth targets that are also being provided to us through the Department of Finance for those 2 fiscal years. When we look at the local control funding formula over that 3-year projected period, it looks like this. The gray area is what our base entitlement was under revenue limit. The gray or the yellow portion is what used to be our state categoricals. The green in the first column, which turns to orange as we go across, is our gap funding or our growth towards target. And then in the subsequent years, the green area is that percentage of growth towards target. So when we look at a comparison of our revenue limit and local control funding formula back to the year 2005-06, you can see that over the last maybe 10 years, our revenue was relatively flat, up and down a little bit, and now we are seeing some projected growth. These are estimates. These are based on the estimates that we know today, and we'll have to watch and see where those revenues come out when we receive our actuals. In our multi-year projections, we are using those same factors that I went over in the bubbles. Those are included down there. On the expenditure side, we're using the 2% for step and column for all salaries that are subject to increases, and using 2% as a statutory benefit increase as well. So you can see based on those assumptions what the beginning balance would be, total revenues, expenditures, and so on. 16-17, same thing. We're using the estimates that were provided to us by the Department of Finance and School Services on our estimates for COLA, etc. And again, using the 2% for step and column, which is our district's average. And you can see what the outcome would be in the 16-7 fiscal year. So what remains unknown? Well, we do have some remaining questions about currently, we have not settled our bargaining unit agreements for the 13-14 years, so we're not sure what impact those settlements will have on the 14-15 year. The governor did include a rather large rate increase for the CalSTRS program that he has proposed to begin implementation in the 14-15 fiscal year, but we do know there's an effort out there to modify the proposal. We're not sure where that's going to land, and we aren't sure what our final enrollment numbers are going to look like in August. We don't know how many students will be coming from Pine Grove or the Wilder project as well. What happens next, we'll come back in 2 weeks and ask for final adoption of the 14-15 budget.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Lorraine, for your presentation. It's great. And thank you for all your work on the budget. Just a couple minor questions. On the page, well, first of all, I just want to point out something out. Page 137 of the board's packet, that's the page where it talks about the local funding, Parents Club, EFO, and parcel tax, which is, of course, always great to look at that page because it shows the chart and the percentage and all of that. But it struck me this year for the first time, if you look at the Parent Club donations over the last 3 years, it's gone down. And I have heard comments from parents and actually with the LCFF comments that they are struggling to meet their commitments of class size reduction and instructional assistance. But it's noticeably, going down the last 3 years. So I just think we should all be aware of that. And then moving forward to page 140, relative to that parent club item, classified staff, instructional assistants, as I know it's something that Parents Club often funds. And then there's noon duty. And I just want to point out the numbers are not consistent across the schools. And I'm wondering what exactly is noon duty, where's that funding coming from, and why is it different across the schools here?
Noon duty positions are funded from district.
From the district? Okay, because there's quite a discrepancy, Orinda at 1.38 or 1.23, and then some of the others half that much. So I don't know if there's a reason for that or what, but I think when other staff fills in, it just kind of begs the question, why do we have not equitable noon duty time? So I hope somebody could kind of look at that and see if the numbers need to be changed or if there's a reason for it. Then on instructional assistant, is that line all funded by Parents Club, or is that a combination of different funding sources?
Probably 98% Parents Club.
Okay, that's what I thought.
We go over class size minimums. That if any class goes over the 20 to 1, the district picks up the cost of the additional.
Oh, okay, yeah, good.
So the majority of that is.
Yeah, but I just want to say I have heard parents at different times say that there's one thing they would love to see is more instructional assistants in their child's classroom, and yet I hear there's there's restrictions on doing that. So the fact that it's not equitable is something I'm not crazy about personally. I think it would be important to try to create some equity there, and also if we can have equity, we are getting more local control funding formula, so it does beg the question, where is that money going to go in the next couple of years? Our chart we showed going up $2 million over the next 3 years. So I know we have many obligations in staffing, and we've got this new governor's thing on the stirs, but these kind of things affect every classroom. So one other thing I want to mention is, two other things. Okay, so further down that page, 140 of the classified staff, there's the two techs, which we talked about last year, and I know they worked over the summer last year. Are these positions now all-year positions? Or is that yet to be determined? Are they going to work again in the summer, in other words?
So I've got a one-year agreement with CSCA to do that. We anticipate that they are, and we're planning that they are, but we have collectively bargained to see.
Oh, okay. So you're still working toward hopefully that happening.
Yes.
Very good. And then on the page before, 139, there was a lot of comments in the LCFF, LCAP comments that we received on technology and different aspects of it. Why don't we teach keyboarding? Why don't we have a computer teacher again? Just looking at this on the bottom half of the page, where we have a literacy coach and then transition coach technology, it does kind of beg the question, since I know that those were originally temporary positions. Since we're going to get a new tech director, could we use the technology coach to be also in the classroom or going to the elementary schools and doing something to get some, stepping in that direction of teaching kids in computer labs again, as we, not the same way we did in the past, but a step in that direction. I just wanted to voice that concern, preference. I don't know what other people on the board think. But I want to throw that out there because I did see a lot of requests for that in the LCAP input that we got.
Any questions?
I have some questions. Thank you, Maureen, for the LCAP also, but budget, which is where I was going to thank you. Do we have an update on the whole CalSTARS funding? Is there any new information, or is that still really up in the air?
It's still up in the air until the governor approves the budget. The latest thing that I heard is there is a push to ask the governor to use some of the money he was going to use to pay down deferrals towards funding the STRS liability. So that would be a shift in how he allocates his funds, but he would have to approve that. That has to be cashed out. So there's a lot of organizations that are petitioning the governor to move off of his May revised proposal. But until he signs the budget or there's legislation signed, it is what it is.
It's a little unfair that the legislature kind of creates the problem and then throws it at the school districts to.
It's very unexpected.
And not very fair, but I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens there. One thing that I was, when I was looking at the budget and thinking back to the last demographic study we had, which sort of showed increasing enrollment even under their most conservative projections. So, are you just budgeting even more? I mean, I know you're saying you're looking at what the enrollment is anticipated for next year based on input that you've received, but I guess I was a little surprised to see us declining when, under the demographic study, it seemed like we'd be increasing. Do you think that's just because Pulte is selling it, or while they're building, or we can't rely on demographic studies? Why do we do them anyway? Required to do them anyway?
Our actual enrollment, the 2456 is only 14 students off of the demographic study that was just recently updated, so I think it's pretty close.
Okay.
14 students, I think that's
Okay,
pretty
yeah,
good. There's a conservative and there's two demographic versions that have been updated. My reason to be conservative at this point is what we've seen is some of the homes that are being sold to families in the Pulte project already have students that are attending Orinda. They're already coming to our school. So demographic study company wouldn't have that information. And so what we're seeing is their existing families that are either relocating, they're in on inter-district transfers and now they're physically moving into the district, or they're moving from one spot to the other. So of the students that we've seen and families that we've seen move in, they're not all new families. So rather than build a new road at this point, based on a hypothetical build out of a project, and especially Wilder, that's been sitting there for several years, I'd rather be conservative in the projections of the growth than estimate something that's
remember looking at these multi-year projections and thinking, hey, we finally are getting more revenue than we are expenditures. But when I looked up there, it looked like it was the reverse. So I'm wondering if
This one?
either one, I think it's sort of the same.
The piece that we have to watch is the beginning fund balance. Because if you look at the beginning fund balance with the revenues, when you add it together, it's 27,000. We're only spending 25 if you want to look at it that way. But we're spending more in the year. Our expenditure, we're still deficit spending. We're still
Well, I
projected
guess
to
when I was
deficit
looking
spend
at-
in 15, 16.
When I was looking at like page 232 or 233, just is showing revenue totaling 26.8 and expenditures totaling 26, and I didn't think the fund and designated balance was even included in there. Maybe is that included?
Which page are you on?
I'm on 232 or 233. You know what I mean? I'm like, I look at and see total revenue projection, 26.8, total expenditures 26. So we end up with
Yeah, but I think this slide is wrong. I apologize, this slide is not accurate.
so what's in our packet
Is accurate.
is actually showing that we're not deficit spending
I apologize.
in our
for that.
projections. I like that. Okay. That's good to know. And then the other question I had is on our OPEB, on our other post-employment benefits.
Yes.
And hope everyone knows, I have an ongoing concern with that fact that we're pay-as-you-go and have a rather large and getting larger unfunded liability on that. I'm wondering, you know, since this is our budget process discussion, what we could do to try to, you know, if we really do want to set up a trust account or do something, and how would that work? You know, what amount could we put aside? How could we do that? And how do we, you know, there's probably some number that you could start putting aside that would then, you know, result in a cost savings down the road because that money will be there. You know, so there's got to be some sort of analysis that could be done. I don't know by whom. To try to figure out, you know, what a viable strategy would be for us to do on that. So I don't know, it's like a board discussion, but you know, and then if we could put some caps on how much that is in the future as well, you know, through some combination of that, I think we could come up with some kind of a plan, you know, that helps us get out of that just pay as you go, if that's something that we want to do.
In order to lower the unfunded liability, you have to set up a irrevocable trust. But you can start to set aside money to address the unfunded liability outside of the irrevocable trust, but it will not change the actuarial won't recognize that amount. Does that make sense?
So you could budget it, but it wouldn't impact the bottom
Until
line.
we
Right,
actually
you
put
can
it out
be
of our-
proactive in setting up a fund to address your liability, but when the actuarial studies are done, they will not recognize a fund or a pot of money to reduce your liability unless it's an established
really can't touch it.
irrevocable trust. Right, right,
Right.
exactly.
Because even now, we have 4.5 million in undesignated and designated, but that's still less than half of what the actuarial number is, so,
Correct.
because there is money there at the moment, but if it's not not in the trust, it's not necessarily going towards that.
I just think it's worth getting information.
So Lorraine, if we were to set money aside outside of the irrevocable trust, would that be listed on page 264 under self-insurance fund? Where it's currently 0, item 3B, item 3A says that we are pay-as-you-go, item 3B, would that be where we would, if we were to, let's say, set aside $500,000, would we list that under self-insurance fund?
We would probably list it under the governmental fund.
Oh. Why? What's the distinction?
We're not in a self-insured, we're not in like a JPA self-insured
Okay.
fund. But a lot of our funds are considered governmental funds. The only thing I would have to make sure is they're not referencing that as a irrevocable trust fund. But we do have, some school districts have established retiree benefit funds. It's a separate fund, it's Fund 20 generally speaking, and they set it up for retiree benefits. So if the board were to take action to establish a new fund for retiree benefits, it would be Fund 20. It would be reported out in the same manner that all the other funds are reported out, and you would see it in all the state reporting, the interim reports and such. But that fund is not considered irrevocable trust, so it won't decrease your liability, but it can be reported out as set aside to meet your need.
Did Akalani's do it that way, or did they actually set up?
We probably have, a lot of school districts have a Fund 20. It's not that uncommon for a Fund 20 to be established, but the problem is it doesn't reduce your accrued liability.
Well, with an unfunded liability of $11.6 million, Julie, I really share your interest in
starting the process of addressing that. I know we can't, you don't eat an elephant in one bite, but you can certainly start the process.
Well, and I think, getting a real analysis of what, how much should you put aside, or what different options we could have to start a process. I mean, right, you're not going to take $4 million and put it somewhere, but, could you take a few $100,000 and put it somewhere and start that process so that to help support the district in future years when the, $400,000 or whatever it is that we pay currently becomes $800,000 or $1 million that we're putting aside for that every year and impacting our budget, a lot more. So, again, this is our budget process, so I thought I'd bring it up and see if we could get that process going. If there's interest.
There is interest.
So I don't know if there's like some type of company that performs this kind of analysis, or how we can do that. Like I said, I would imagine that there's some sort of some sort of crossing point where what you're setting aside makes economic sense for based on your future savings. There must be some way that somebody can do some sort of analysis on that. Very artfully stated, but
Yeah, we can put that on
I don't see it happening in the next 2 weeks.
from you. Put that on for
Okay.
discussion.
Thank you.
Can you roll through the one? Thank you for this. I would like to get a copy of. I don't know if there's another word.
I'll correct
I'd like to see a copy.
amounts.
Maybe.
PowerPoint, yeah.
Sorry.
I've got a few things came to mind. I don't know if we could go backwards through this.
Sure.
Kind of. One, yeah, stopping either there or there. So is either way our enrollment that we're carrying, the 2385 or these future years and the percentage of 97. Am I then to take, if I took the actual enrollment, I'll call it 24 and change, and subtract 2380 and change, that difference of 70 students enrollment, multiply that by $5,000 or $6,000 depending on which year, and I'm coming up with $400,000 that we could get if we didn't have folks miss school.
Correct.
I mean, that's a lot of campaigning to get $350,000, $400,000 So I don't know if there's a better way to communicate this.
Kids always get sick.
They do, but there's I don't think it counts against just being sick. You get an excuse. This is more, you don't do the work and you don't even turn in a letter and you don't.
Well,
So
what do you think
something
you
like
can
that.
clarify? You have to, what do you
Yeah,
know,
what's
have to
the-
be careful. They have to miss a certain block of time, and then they have to, but if you're
We-
sick one day here or one day there.
We don't get, back in the day, if a child was sick, we were funded for excused absences. So if the child had a note that said I was homesick, we got funded for it anyway. That's no longer the case. There's no positive attendance, so if a child is absent, we don't get funded.
Whether they have a note or.
Whether they have the flu, or their tonsils out, or skipped school that day. We don't get the funding. The only way we do get the funding is if they are on an independent study contract,
Which is a block of time, right?
minimum of 5 days. And there's paperwork involved, the contract needs to be signed in advance, and homework needs to be turned in. But there's an area that we probably could do a better job in.
Or if they show up for 5 minutes and sign in and then go home.
Exactly, so there's, I won't spare you the saint, but basically they just have to show up. Sometimes if a child has a doctor's appointment at 11, perhaps the parent won't send the child to school, so we do not get attendance or an apportionment for that entire day. But if they did come to school, checked in, attended for an hour or two, whatever it is, and really it is, they just have to be there for attendance and then they could leave technically, and we would get money for it.
Does that get captured well? I mean, when a student shows up at noon or something like that, does that always get into the records that they were there for part of the
I
day?
would
Because I'm not sure it does. Because I guess when I see, well, I mean, I see my kids' dates missed, and I think some of those are either tardy or showed up later or whatever that is. I'm not sure we necessarily capture all of those part day kids.
I would hope that we do, but that's probably another area that we could look at, because like you said, if the student goes directly to the class rather than checking in the office, potentially they've already been marked absent for the day. That absent wasn't converted to a tardy, whether it's an approved tardy or an unexcused tardy. We wouldn't get the ADA for that day, which we would be entitled to.
So it doesn't mean you have to show up at the beginning of the day.
We just have to show up
You
here.
can show up during the day and get recorded as such.
Exactly, they could show up at 2:55 and school's out at 3.
Or show up at 8, leave at 8:05.
Right. Or show up at noon and, and leave 5 minutes later. They just actually literally have to show up. And we receive an apportionment for the entire day. It's not prorated based on the time they were there. It's an entire day of attendance.
I mean, there's a proper way to message that, I guess. It's not just show up for 5 minutes and encourage that by any means, but I mean, I guess I would stress that I hope that we're doing everything we can to prioritize capturing that. I mean, it's $300,000-$400,000, and maybe I don't know, even a quarter of that, it's $100,000. That's a lot of money. That it's just gone.
Yeah.
Orinda's done a good job of raising this as our attention this year and engaging the school principals to work with staff to promote that. And I think that's helped. I think what Chris raised is an issue for us, and we walk a fine line is we don't want students to come to school without well.
Right.
Because of all the problems that
Well,
creates.
we want that for 5 minutes.
Well, even so, we do have that problem where we're actually sending kids home because we find out they're coming to school now. So, there is a percentage there that, we have
But
to
the point about like doctor's appointments, maybe,
Yes.
like that is something that maybe is just an awareness.
Yes, and
Or people who are going on vacation but are leaving in the afternoon, they could,
And I think that's what part of the issue is. I think Orinda has raised that issue and what it means to us and how to track that. But we do have significant numbers that do take students away on trips at all times of the year, and so it does affect us. Those are challenges. 97% is still really good.
Oh, sure.
But you're right. You reach down to that fine percentage points, and there are some people we don't know if they're going to change their ways or not.
Well, maybe there's an awareness issue too. They don't realize that when everyone who comes to ask them for money to donate, right? They're not connecting the dot that they're paying some money and they're also pulling it right back from other sources at the same time.
That's the point we've attempted to make this year, so we're trying. Trying some.
Yeah, I remember seeing a couple of emails in the fall from principals, and they had some good messages.
So that's about 5-6 days a year for a kid.
So I think the other thing that I saw through here was, I think it was a little further back, the enrollments. And it was
Oops, on the right.
going somewhere near the beginning.
By school
I think so, yeah.
for next year.
Oh, that one.
There we go.
Or no, maybe a little forward. It was the third per class, maybe.
Oh,
So seeing the 13s, 15s, 14s, I'm looking at total teachers. Is that what I'm looking at there?
yes, those are FTE,
And then down below, I'm looking at what corresponding ratios for those teachers.
correct.
And does that include TK at this point in terms of numbers, or it doesn't?
Yes.
It does? Okay, so the 20 to 1 ratio down below is including TK through 3. At the
So that's
start,
an
and going
average?
17, 19, 18, those are with TK to 3?
Yes. Yes,
Oh, wait,
these are this year's numbers where you'll see some, like this one's over 20 to 1 at Wagner Ranch. But this is what we're projecting the enrollment to be for next year based on adding the 3 FTE at the elementary side to the primary grades. This is OIS in the corner. If I can change that. There it goes.
But I guess
But it's really TK through
it's
3,
TK
not
through 3
K
is what I
through
wanted to
3.
make sure.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Is
yes.
that what?
Yes, I'm sorry.
But also I'm remembering that we're only have TK at 2 of the schools, so are those numbers reflecting that?
Yes.
So which 2 schools is the TK at?
Right now, the proposal will be to have a TK class at Delray, which is a combination of Glorietta and Delray, and a class at Sleepy Hollow, which is a combination of Wagner Ranch and Sleepy Hollow.
Thank you for clarifying. I think the other thing that, along the lines of what Julie mentioned with establishing a fund, I guess I was curious, the comment to get rid of our deferred maintenance fund. Yet I know in facilities discussion, we've been talking about actually establishing a fund with some money so that we don't exacerbate issues. Is that the right fund if we were to do that, to just keep it alive, or is there a different vehicle by which there's another reason why we want to get rid of that fund and do something different?
Thank you for asking that question. The deferred maintenance fund is actually a state established fund, which the funding no longer exists. So we really do have to eliminate that fund.
Spend the money.
The money that's in, yeah, no, 20 cents.
The $56.
We filed to spend the 20 cents. But within Fund 40, I don't know if you saw in the breakdown in both of the state reports and in the Excel spreadsheet that was on the cover sheet of the Excel summary of Fund 40, we have set aside the $500,000 in the contingency that was recommended above. So there is money that's in earmarked to not be spent out of Fund 40 based on the comments at the last board meeting.
So the idea is to keep it right now in that vehicle. Is there any reason we would put it somewhere else? Like better interest, or, I mean, it's still restricted money, so.
We do have some of that money invested in LEAF, and so that money is drawing higher interest in our county treasury. But other special reserve fund that it could go into would be like the Fund 17. That's generally other than capital outlay, so depends on for what purpose. If it was for retiree type benefits, it would go into Fund 20. So the state sort of establishes the fund numbers that we can use and the purpose behind them because they align with the state documents. It's part of the whole tax account.
So right now, leaving it in that one is
It's probably
right
the
now
most
the best one that we
appropriate.
have for it.
Right.
So how does the board help the district close that other fund?
But the deferred maintenance, we are spending that 20 cents this month. One way or the other.
Half a stamp?
Well, actually, I misspoke. It's actually 2 cents because what the county office did was they posted 2 cents worth of interest to the fund after we had closed it out. So we actually didn't have 20 cents, we had 2 cents in the fund. So we totally are all over that 2 cents. And we do want to get that spent. Told the county, please do not post any more interest. I don't know what interest you can earn on 2 cents, but hopefully.
Take a long time.
Okay, I'm gonna do what I started to do with the other discussion item and say now is time for public comment. Yet there's a public hearing on this item afterwards, so if you'd like to make a public comment now you can, but there's a public hearing to come. So is there any public comment on this item?
President. The assumptions that teachers may not be recapturing attendance when a student shows up late, I think is misguided. It possibly does happen, but I know at Glorieta, our principal and office manager have been really good about helping us with attendance. And I know myself, I recapture that. So I'm feeling very sensitive on behalf of the teachers on that comment. I also want to say that the STIRS proposal, they are looking at minimal impact because a lot of districts have already bargained, and that would be a significant impact on those districts with the current proposal. So it's our hope that they'll go with very minimal impact for the first 2 years. But again, it's a proposal. We did see, Colleen and I were looking up there, that it looked like a $2 million increase, and yet we're hearing that we have a deficit. And so we were very confused by that, seeing that there was an additional $2 million from LCFF, and then hearing that we're deficit spending. Other than that, the teachers wanted to call out and say that we saw there was 37% local funding. We really appreciate the parents and all the fundraising. We see it every day. It's incredible the amount of time that our local community and our parent clubs and EFO put into raising money. And we're really going to notice it at Glorieta. They're putting in an outdoor classroom. They're putting in a brand new play structure. We know we could not do the work that we do in this district without the efforts of our parents and their friends from out of town, everybody else that comes. So the teachers want to make sure that I said again tonight, thank you so much. We couldn't do it without you, and we really appreciate it.
I'm concerned about the liability fund because it seems like it could possibly be sequestering money from our children now and their educators now as some possible future liability. I mean, I know that we make a huge effort to obey the laws, and when there are problems and people sue, quite often those problems can be averted by apologizing and fixing mistakes rather than being overly cautious with a liability fund. We do have some excess now, it seems, to deal with any but the most egregious and rare suits. And I would like to see this money not be sequestered away, but instead used for extra programs and finding and retaining the most effective teachers, which are not, in fact, Ken and Penny, even here in Orinda. Thank you.
Are there comments from the public?
Shauna Simmons. So I have a question that I'll phrase as a comment. So Lauren, I might be calling you about, if you look at the source of revenue for local sources, it says 26.4%, and then if you look at the pie chart, it says 37%. 10%. So, and then Sarah had a comment before about the Parents Club funds and the fact that they look like they're declining. And the reason for that is that the Parents Club periodically makes substantial one-time contributions. So if you look at 08, 09, that was when we built the two before and after school club buildings at Orinda and Sleepy Hollow. And then the other spike was the substantial investment in technology in classroom smart boards and such. And they have not been cutting the budgets due to lack of fundraising efforts. At least in the core, the other programs have, but funding the instructional assistants and the other things that parents clubs have committed to, that funding has stayed the same.
Thanks for explaining that.
And my goal for EFO next year is to see that start to increase.
Other comments from the public?
I have a quick one, it's like 10 seconds. I just want to remind the board that at Gloria we have 2 play yards. And because it was mentioned earlier that we had a lot more in-duty supervision. But again, we have 2 play yards, and that's unique to Gloria.
Other comments from the public? Further discussion from the board? Budget? Seeing none, I will have us move towards.
One thing, last, because this may be the right spot for it. We discussed at the last board meeting, sharing a list of those, all the programmatic facility projects that have been authorized or in some way, shape, or form represent the 4.9, my memory serves me from the slide. I didn't see that on the agenda today, haven't heard anything, so I'm wondering, is there a way we can get the breakdown of that subsequent to this meeting so that we can understand what the 4.9 represents?
We actually have a draft of that, and we're going to share that with our board president, when he comes over to meet, and then ending that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to discussion item C, public hearing fiscal year 2014-2015 adoption of the budget. I will open the public hearing on the budget. Any comments from the public on the adoption budget? Charles?
Charles Shanowy, President. We're noticing that there are some categories in the budget that seem that there's additional monies there. And we just want to make it the board aware of that that's something that isn't always clear to OEA and potentially to the public, that there are those additional amounts, and then they go back into the general fund at some point. So I just want to make that clear.
Any other comments from the public? And then I will close the hearing and move on to discussion item D, 2013-2014 district goals summary report.
So my intent here is to not reread you the report. You have the report. I'd just like to highlight that, as you hopefully know, this year we have these 4 major goals that we've been working on that breaks down to key areas in the district in this transition year, where we've had a number of our major areas affected, from facilities to curriculum, budget, so forth. But we have developed the academic achievement goal, the facilities goal, the technology goal, and the fiscal goal. And obviously, you can't think of any other really key parts of the budget that couldn't help but affect student learning. And in the first goal, you see a number of activities listed that directly affect academics, and they involve the impact of our 3-year curriculum plan. They involve collecting input from our curriculum committee and our technology committee, and then creating what we are now seeing the results of is our Common Core expenditure plans, and you've already seen that this year. In the facilities, you're familiar with the task force and its plans and the timelines, and obviously worked on one of those items tonight. Technology was the technology plan, and then of course the fiscal plan. We were impacted with this requirement to do the LCAP, and you've certainly been working on that. So there's a lot of details, summary details there too, what we worked on this year. It's actually quite amazing in addition to all that, that we're as close as we are with a number of these topics. We also had the district office construction and relocation. We had a number of other normal issues that we would deal with, but I think these major transition goals that we have with the LCAP and the Common Core facilities and so forth, being able to get stars in there. So I'm happy to give you questions.
Okay, so questions on the summary report of our goals?
A question for me, but just a comment, that is just to thank the superintendent and staff in what I thought were very, very ambitious goals as we approved them, and to see the achievements and the strides we've made this year, all while dealing with construction of a new district office, adoption of the Common Core, working through the LCAP process, changing over our funding method to LCFF. I think it's also really important to note that in the middle of all that, all 4 of our elementary schools were honored with the California Distinguished School Award. We're in the process of working closely with our neighboring district in Moraga to try and hire a director of technology, which I think is really significant. I really appreciate superintendent's efforts on that. And I think that the accomplishments we've made in these district goals are something we can all be proud of, but especially staff, superintendent, along with our great teachers and their efforts. I think the kids benefit, and I think they'll continue to benefit. And it's always my goal, and I think we've done a great job of it, but we can always continue to improve on embedding these goals into our processes as we move forward. And I know how challenging that is, because after 5 years you end up with 20 district goals embedded into your school culture. But I think it's something that I know we've talked about as a board. I know it's something that as a district we've tried to do, and I applaud the effort to continue that process as well. So thank you very much.
I'd like to second what Matt said so eloquently. So thank you for, I think the district made really impressive progress on, as Matt pointed out, a lot of new things happening this year. Just a minor question that I have on the Common Core standards adoption and the curriculum plan for the first year, and that's where are we on like the textbook adoption in general? Do we have textbooks yet, or in certain subjects?
It's a very good question, and Kathy Marshall's been working a lot on that topic with our staff, and will continue to, and she could give a brief response to that problem.
We have an instructional materials review group in mathematics right now, and they started meeting in May. It's a subcommittee of the curriculum committee, and we have grade level reps across all grades through 5 for elementary who have had a couple meetings, and they have been doing a review process with their math consultant. The meeting was done on June 16th to plan for the pilot in the fall. We're going to pilot the
President. In looking through the summary report of district goals, what you'll notice is intensive participation of teachers, and also I do want to recognize staff. It's a lot of work that teachers have put in. Staff have joined us, and I know we've worked alongside our directors and district staff. So I want to say that I really appreciate and have seen my colleagues spend endless hours during school and after school and on weekends. And I think this summary report does establish that we have absolutely outstanding educators in this district who really put forth lots and lots of their time, both time they're paid for and time outside of their hours. So I really appreciate that, and I hope it's acknowledged.
Any other comments from the public? Any more discussion from the board?
Well, I'd like to also say that, yes, we've done a lot this year, and thank you to the superintendent for all the work on these goals, and also thank you to all the staff and district directors for everything that they did. It's just lots of changes and transition, and everyone's done a great job. Thank you.
Okay.
I think, add one thing, you should also thank yourselves as a board, because none of these things would be possible without the actions that you take to improve projects, programs, towards achievement.
Okay, discussion item E, Board of Trustees meeting schedule, Dr. Bethany.
So this is our first attempt for the coming year to propose a draft schedule for your meeting schedule. You'll have an opportunity to adopt that at the June meeting, the second June meeting. And tonight is a draft of that. You can see from the agenda bill that it's basically been rolled forward with your current pattern. The only exception is the issue of the November Veterans Day holiday. And you know that we have 2 meetings in June to deal with budget.
Questions or concerns?
I'll just ask, since last year apparently there was a conflict with the holiday, did we check against any holidays that these aren't, because I think it was a Jewish holiday.
I checked again for the Jewish holiday.
You did? Okay, good, because I didn't want
I
to.
haven't checked other religions.
Okay, no problem.
There is a conflict with Orthodox Easter on Monday. That's all out of the book.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to check it if other people had already done that, so thank you.
Any comments from the public on this item? Any more
I
discussion?
can't guarantee I'll be here August 11th. It's possible that if we're going away, that would be the 1 week.
The August is always hard.
So, just let you know.
Okay, well, we will have this on record.
Why is he here?
And board reports. Any reports from board members?
I'm just going to briefly report. This is my first year of having a senior at Miramani graduating, and it's just been interesting to see the process of see a kid go through OUSD and then go to our local high school. Sarah, you've had the pleasure of going through it, and just to be so impressed with what's coming out of our local high school. With the kids that are coming out of OUSD. And this is where I'm really touched by the efforts of our teachers, because they're the ones that are touching these kids from 5 years old on up. Last Tuesday was an academic awards ceremony, and these kids are being recognized for their efforts and their things they're doing above and beyond service to the community. just really, just some wildly impressive group of kids coming out of our school district. Last night was the baccalaureate, which is a non-denominational service, put together, and we got to hear the choir, public speakers, instrumental music, drama, got to see kids really doing amazing things, and I was really overwhelmed with the sense of these kids are all ready to go out into the world and give it their best. And for whatever reason, I was really making the connection with the efforts of our teachers, the impacts they have every day in the lives of our kids. So, really very impressive.
To piggyback on that a little bit, when I run the writing contest with the Orinda Library, and this year, all but one of our winners was enrolled students. So writing.
So on the, I guess on that theme, I spaced it in sending my thing to Kathy this morning, but attending the EFO annual meeting, I was able to beat my feet there early and see pretty wild drama happening. And it was students just laying it all out there with really no stage at all except for a room and everything that they came to provide. And then following that, going out and seeing the creations and different artwork and a young gentleman just playing guitar for the whole group, just continuously. I mean, along the lines of what Matt's saying, I mean, seeing the fruits of what comes out of it, whether it's the staff labor or students' labor in learning is remarkable. So I was looking through this going, I didn't put that down, but it was definitely one of the takeaways, as was the choir and spring concert at OAS, and seeing where they're taking it. I mean, there's some kids there that they're already blowing my mind as far as talent at such a young age. Cool.
I just wanted to comment, following up on the Miramani theme, that I went to the farewell, the ice cream social at noontime at Miramani today for Adam Clark, principal, who's leaving. So I'm sorry to see him leave because he's been principal there since my daughter started, and now my son's there. And he's been a great principal, but I'm sure they'll find another good one, but just wanted to mention that. And having gone to all the open houses, I was very pleased to be able to attend all of our open houses and really impressed with all the work on in the classrooms and on the walls. And it's just so great to go around and see that at this time of year. Thank you.
And I'll add a report of Princess Aladdin at Glorietta. Just wanted to acknowledge to the parent community a tremendous amount of hundreds of hours volunteer hours going into productions like that happen throughout the district. It's a really good experience, building experience for those kids. So that's great.
Thank you. Ditto on all those comments, and the open houses this year were just tremendous. I really appreciated the hard work that the teachers did for pulling all these activities and events and displays that work together. Sent my compliments to all of the teachers in the district for the hard work. Our compliments to our district directors for all the work they're pulling the items together that we saw tonight, and Ed for his work on the new district office. We are coming closer again to another proposed move, which now looks like it will be the very end of June. We're shooting for the 26th, 27th, Thursday and Friday, to try to pull this off. So keep your fingers crossed, and we'll do that. We'll be after the board. Yeah. And it's a great time of the year, all the open houses, and we have our motion ceremony that we're looking forward to coming up at OIS. Our principals attended the Distinguished School Awards today. They're today and Friday, and so as usual, and a lot of, just a lot of great cause for celebration. Really appreciate
Future agenda items, we have the governance handbook, school discipline policies, agenda online, and added OPEB discussion to that. Other future agenda items? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Aye.
That's all. I was looking at baseball, okay, so we can go.
That's the one number that I gave you.
Well, you have other